Have you ever felt like you're constantly available to everyone? Always on call, always ready to help, always putting others' needs before your own, only to find yourself exhausted, unfulfilled, and wondering where your life went? It's a common struggle in today's hyper-connected world, where the pressure to be perpetually accessible can leave us feeling drained and disconnected from our true selves. Baruch Spinoza, one of history's most profound philosophers, offers a transformative perspective on this dilemma. In his seminal work, Ethics, Spinoza delves into the nature of human freedom, relationships, and the pursuit of understanding, arguing that true liberation begins when we stop being endlessly available to others and start becoming fully present for ourselves. This video will explore Spinoza's insights into why saying no can be the most powerful step toward reclaiming your life, and how letting go of constant availability can lead to profound personal transformation. Whether you're grappling with burnout, seeking balance, or simply curious about the hidden potential of setting boundaries, these teachings will empower you to embrace a life of purpose, joy, and authenticity. Let me introduce you to Rachel, a dedicated marketing manager living in a bustling city. By all accounts, she was successful. Her team admired her leadership, her clients trusted her expertise, and her friends relied on her unwavering support. Yet, despite her outward achievements, Rachel often felt overwhelmed and disconnected. She couldn't understand why. After all, she was doing everything she thought she was supposed to do. One evening, while reading Spinoza's Ethics, she stumbled upon a passage that struck her deeply. The more a person knows themselves, the less they fear others. Intrigued, Rachel began exploring Spinoza's philosophy, eager to uncover why her constant availability seemed to leave her feeling empty rather than fulfilled. What she discovered would transform her understanding of boundaries and reveal how even the most giving individuals can rediscover their essence by reclaiming their time and energy. As we follow Rachel's journey, you'll uncover the same timeless wisdom that changed her life and discover how it can illuminate your own path to transformation. Rachel's journey into Spinoza's philosophy began with a simple yet profound realization. Much of her exhaustion stemmed not from a lack of effort or dedication, but from how she perceived her role in relation to others. She noticed that while she was constantly available, whether it was answering late-night emails, attending every social event, or offering endless support to friends and colleagues, she rarely paused to ask herself what she truly needed. One day, while reflecting on Spinoza's assertion that the mind can only be at peace when it understands the causes of things, Rachel began to question the root of her unease. She realized that her identity had become intertwined with being the go-to person, the one everyone relied on. Spinoza argued that when we fail to see ourselves as distinct individuals with intrinsic value, we create artificial separations that lead to suffering. Inspired by this insight, Rachel decided to examine her own beliefs about availability. Instead of viewing it as a measure of her worth, she began asking herself, what does it mean to be truly present for myself? And why does letting go of constant availability feel so unsettling? This newfound awareness didn't immediately dissolve her feelings of overwhelm, but it planted a seed of curiosity. Rachel started observing her daily life more closely, noticing patterns she hadn't seen before. For instance, during a particularly demanding week at work, she found herself responding to messages at all hours, driven by an unspoken belief that her value was tied to her responsiveness. When the week ended, she felt not fulfillment but exhaustion, and a lingering sense that she hadn't truly connected with herself or others throughout the process. Drawing on Spinoza's teachings, she reminded herself that true presence isn't defined by external availability, but by an authentic alignment with one's essence. By shifting her focus from obligation to self-discovery, she began to approach her time and energy with greater intentionality. Still, Rachel couldn't help but wonder, could this shift in perspective truly alleviate her sense of depletion? And what other insights might Spinoza offer to deepen her understanding of boundaries? These questions lingered in her mind, drawing her further into her exploration of philosophy. As Rachel delved deeper into Spinoza's philosophy, she encountered one of his most provocative ideas, the illusion of availability as a measure of worth. Spinoza argued that much of human suffering arises from our mistaken belief that our value is determined by external actions or roles rather than our intrinsic nature. In Ethics, he wrote, "The greatest good is to know the union which the mind has with the whole of nature." This insight challenged Rachel to examine how her sense of self-worth was rooted in perceptions shaped by societal expectations. She realized that while she often equated being available with being valuable, this belief had become a substitute for genuine self-understanding. It wasn't that her efforts to help others were meaningless. It was that they had overshadowed her ability to connect with her own needs and desires. Inspired by Spinoza's teachings, Rachel began to explore what it meant to look beyond appearances, a concept Spinoza referred to as aligning with the essence of existence. One particular moment stands out, a day when Rachel attended a team meeting where colleagues praised her for always being accessible and responsive. While their admiration felt validating, Rachel found herself questioning whether this praise truly reflected who she was, or if it was merely a reflection of her willingness to sacrifice her own time. Recalling Spinoza's principle of understanding the causes of things, she paused and asked herself, "Why do I feel the need to be constantly available? Is it because it truly reflects my value, or because I'm seeking approval from others?" By reflecting on her motivations, she realized that her reliance on external validation stemmed more from fear of inadequacy than from an authentic connection to her identity. This realization allowed her to step back and embrace a broader sense of self, one that wasn't confined to her role as the always available person. For the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of liberation, not because she had abandoned her responsibilities, but because she had expanded her understanding of her worth beyond them. Still, Rachel wondered how consistently applying this principle might reshape her sense of self-worth. Could it help her transcend the lingering sense of depletion that haunted her? These questions deepened her commitment to exploring Spinoza's wisdom further. As Rachel's understanding of availability deepened, she began to explore another cornerstone of Spinoza's philosophy, the role of desire in shaping our sense of obligation. Spinoza argued that our desires, what we seek, what we cling to, and what we fear losing, are central to how we experience fulfillment or its absence. In Ethics, he explained that when our desires are misaligned with our true nature or driven by external validation, they lead to suffering. This insight struck a chord with Rachel as she reflected on her own life. She realized that much of her exhaustion stemmed from a subtle yet pervasive desire for recognition, a need to be seen as indispensable, reliable, and always helpful. When this desire wasn't met, she felt frustrated and disconnected, as though her efforts were meaningless. Inspired by Spinoza's teachings, Rachel decided to examine her desires more closely, asking herself, "What am I truly seeking when I make myself constantly available? And why does it matter so much to me?" This process of introspection revealed something profound. Many of her desires were rooted in societal expectations rather than her authentic self. For instance, she had always equated being available with being valued, believing that saying yes to every request was the ultimate marker of worth. But when she paused to consider what truly brought her joy, she discovered that her happiest moments came not from external validation, but from moments of quiet reflection, creative pursuits, and meaningful connections. By aligning her desires with these deeper values, she found that her sense of depletion began to soften. One particular evening stands out, a time when Rachel attended a casual gathering with friends. Instead of focusing on ensuring everyone else was comfortable, she allowed herself to engage fully in the moment, sharing stories and laughter without hesitation. To her surprise, this vulnerability fostered a deeper sense of belonging than she had experienced in years. Still, Rachel couldn't help but wonder, how far could this practice of aligning desires with authenticity stretch? Could it help her cultivate a sense of identity that felt truly fulfilling rather than superficial? These questions lingered in her mind, guiding her further into Spinoza's wisdom. As Rachel continued to explore the alignment of her desires with authenticity, she began to delve into another transformative aspect of Spinoza's philosophy: the role of emotions in shaping our experience of availability. Spinoza argued that emotions are not inherently good or bad. They are natural expressions of our interaction with the world. However, when we fail to understand their causes, they can lead to suffering. In Ethics, he explained that emotions like frustration or inadequacy arise when we perceive ourselves as disconnected from what we value. This insight challenged Rachel to examine how her emotions influenced her sense of obligation. She realized that much of her exhaustion stemmed from suppressing her own feelings, whether it was irritation over unmet expectations or disappointment with her inability to measure up. By ignoring these emotions, she had inadvertently reinforced her reliance on constant availability. Inspired by Spinoza's teachings, Rachel decided to embrace her emotions as signals rather than burdens, asking herself, "What is this feeling trying to tell me? And how can I use it to deepen my understanding of myself?" This practice of emotional awareness transformed how Rachel approached her daily life. For instance, one afternoon, after a particularly draining day of back-to-back meetings and client calls, she found herself overwhelmed by a wave of frustration. Initially, she tried to push the feeling aside, focusing instead on responding to yet another email. But recalling Spinoza's principle that emotions reveal truths about our nature, she paused and allowed herself to sit with the feeling. She realized that her frustration wasn't just about the workload. It was about yearning for balance and authenticity in her actions. By acknowledging this truth, she felt empowered to take small steps toward fostering those qualities. She began setting boundaries with colleagues, politely declining non-essential tasks, and prioritizing moments of rest and reflection. To her surprise, these actions didn't alienate others. They enhanced her sense of purpose, leaving her with a renewed connection to her work and relationships. Still, Rachel wondered how consistently practicing emotional awareness might reshape her long-term experience of availability. Could it help her navigate even the most challenging moments of self-doubt? These questions deepened her commitment to embracing Spinoza's path to understanding. As Rachel embraced the practice of understanding her emotions, she began to confront another profound insight from Spinoza's philosophy: the illusion of control and availability. Throughout her life, Rachel had often approached her role as the always available person with an unspoken belief that she could manage or direct outcomes, ensuring harmony, avoiding conflict, and maintaining a sense of order. Yet, Spinoza argued that much of human suffering arises from this very misconception, that we can control forces far beyond our influence. In Ethics, he wrote, "Men believe themselves to be free because they are conscious of their own actions, but ignorant of the causes by which those actions are determined." This perspective challenged Rachel to examine how her desire for control perpetuated feelings of exhaustion. For instance, she realized that many of her interactions were driven by an unconscious need to steer outcomes, to ensure that conversations went smoothly, that others felt supported, and that no one was upset. These efforts often left her drained and disconnected, as she equated loss of control with failure. Inspired by Spinoza's teachings, Rachel decided to experiment with surrender, not in the sense of giving up, but in accepting the natural flow of relationships and circumstances. One particular moment stands out: a day when Rachel attended a family gathering where tensions ran high over differing opinions. Initially, Rachel felt compelled to mediate every disagreement, fearing that unresolved conflicts would reflect poorly on her or undermine her role as the peacemaker. But instead of intervening, she paused and reminded herself of Spinoza's principle: external events are not inherently good or bad. They simply are. By releasing her need to control the dynamics, she found surprising peace. She listened without judgment, offered support only when asked, and allowed the interactions to unfold naturally. To her amazement, The gathering ended on a note of reconciliation that she hadn't anticipated. This experience reinforced her understanding that exhaustion diminishes when we stop trying to manipulate outcomes and instead embrace their unpredictability. Still, Rachel couldn't help but wonder how consistently practicing surrender might reshape her approach to availability. Could it teach her to embrace imperfection as an integral part of human interaction? And how might it deepen her trust in the unfolding of relationships? These questions lingered in her mind, guiding her further into Spinoza's wisdom. As Rachel embraced the practice of surrender, she began to explore another transformative aspect of Spinoza's philosophy: the power of vulnerability in setting boundaries. Spinoza argued that true freedom comes not from hiding our weaknesses, but from embracing them as part of our shared humanity. In Ethics, he wrote, "The more a person knows themselves, the less they fear others." This idea resonated deeply with Rachel, who had spent much of her life masking her exhaustion behind a facade of strength and selflessness. She realized that her depletion was often exacerbated by her reluctance to reveal her authentic self, fearing judgment or rejection if others saw her struggles. Inspired by Spinoza's teachings, Rachel decided to experiment with vulnerability, asking herself, what would happen if I allowed others to see me as I truly am? Not just as the helper or the giver, but as someone with limits, fears, and imperfections. This shift toward vulnerability didn't come easily. It required unlearning years of conditioning. One particular moment stands out: a day when Rachel met with a close colleague over coffee. Initially, she found herself slipping into her usual role of offering advice and support, even though her colleague hadn't asked for it. But then, recalling Spinoza's principle of self-knowledge, she paused and shared something she rarely admitted: her own feelings of burnout and exhaustion. To her surprise, her colleague responded with empathy and understanding, sharing similar struggles of their own. This exchange created a profound sense of connection, one that went beyond surface-level pleasantries and tapped into the shared essence of their humanity. Over time, Rachel noticed that practicing vulnerability not only deepened her relationships, but also alleviated her exhaustion. For instance, during team meetings at work, she began speaking more openly about challenges she faced, inviting collaboration rather than shouldering burdens alone. Still, Rachel wondered how consistently embracing vulnerability might reshape her long-term experience of availability. Could it help her foster relationships that felt truly reciprocal and fulfilling? These questions deepened her commitment to integrating this practice into her daily life. As Rachel embraced the practice of vulnerability, she began to explore another liberating aspect of Spinoza's philosophy: detachment from external validation. Spinoza argued that true freedom comes not from seeking approval or fearing rejection, but from cultivating an inner equilibrium that remains unaffected by external circumstances. In Ethics, he wrote, "The greatest good is the knowledge of the union which the mind has with the whole of nature." This idea resonated deeply with Rachel, who had spent much of her life measuring her worth through the eyes of others, whether it was praise from colleagues, admiration from clients, or affirmation in personal relationships. She realized that this dependency on external validation had been a breeding ground for exhaustion, as it left her constantly anxious about losing favor or being misunderstood. Inspired by Spinoza's teachings, Rachel decided to shift her focus inward, asking herself, what does it mean to find validation within myself rather than from others? This practice of self-validation didn't come easily. It required unlearning years of conditioning. One particular moment stands out: a day when Rachel received lukewarm feedback on a project she had poured her heart into. Initially, disappointment washed over her, and old fears of inadequacy resurfaced. But instead of spiraling into self-doubt, she paused and reflected on Spinoza's principle of inner equilibrium. She reminded herself that her value wasn't contingent on others' opinions. It was inherent and immutable. By detaching her sense of worth from external outcomes, she found a newfound sense of freedom. Over time, this mindset began to permeate other areas of her life. For instance, during social interactions, she noticed that she no longer felt compelled to impress others or conform to their expectations. Instead, she approached conversations with authenticity and presence, fostering deeper connections without the burden of seeking approval. Still, Rachel couldn't help but wonder how consistently practicing this detachment might shape her long-term resilience. Could it help her navigate even the most challenging moments of rejection or criticism? And how might it empower her to live with greater authenticity and purpose? These questions deepened her commitment to embracing Spinoza's path to liberation. As Rachel continued to explore the interplay between vulnerability and detachment, she began to uncover another transformative aspect of Spinoza's philosophy: the centrality of joy in embracing boundaries. Spinoza argued that joy, or what he called active emotions, is not merely a fleeting feeling, but a state of being that arises when we align ourselves with our true nature and the essence of existence. In Ethics, he explained that joy expands our capacity to act and think clearly, while sadness contracts it, leaving us trapped in cycles of negativity. This insight challenged Rachel to shift her focus from avoiding discomfort to cultivating joy as a foundation for fostering genuine self-discovery. She realized that much of her exhaustion stemmed from a scarcity mindset, an underlying belief that saying no was inherently selfish or unkind. Inspired by Spinoza's teachings, Rachel decided to experiment with practices that foster joy, such as immersing herself in creative pursuits, spending time in nature, and nurturing meaningful relationships. One particular moment stands out: a weekend when Rachel decided to disconnect from work and technology to spend time painting, a hobby she had neglected for years. As she lost herself in the colors and textures, she felt an unexpected surge of joy, not because of any external achievement, but because she was fully present in the act itself. This experience reinforced Spinoza's idea that joy arises naturally when we engage in activities that align with our authentic selves. Over time, Rachel noticed that cultivating joy didn't just alleviate exhaustion. It transformed her entire outlook on boundaries. For instance, during stressful periods at work, she found that moments of laughter with colleagues or brief pauses to appreciate small victories helped her maintain perspective and resilience. Still, Rachel wondered how consistently prioritizing joy might shape her ability to face life's inevitable challenges. Could it help her approach even the most difficult moments of setting boundaries with grace and courage? And how might it inspire others to embrace joy as a path to freedom? These questions deepened her commitment to integrating joy into every aspect of her life. As Rachel reflected on the principles she had embraced: vulnerability, detachment, joy, unity, and surrender, she realized they weren't isolated concepts but interconnected threads woven together by Spinoza's profound vision of existence. Each teaching had challenged her to see exhaustion not as an external condition, but as an internal signal, an invitation to examine her beliefs and align herself with the natural order of the universe. Exhaustion was no longer a paralyzing force, but a guidepost pointing her toward deeper truths about herself and the world. In Ethics, Spinoza wrote, "The more a person knows, the less they fear." This journey wasn't about eliminating exhaustion entirely. It was about transforming her relationship with it, replacing ignorance with understanding, separation with unity, and control with surrender. Now, as Rachel stood at the threshold of a new chapter in her life, she felt a deep sense of gratitude and responsibility. The wisdom she had gained wasn't meant to be hoarded, it was meant to be shared. She realized that her story could inspire others to confront their own struggles with availability, offering them a roadmap to transformation through Spinoza's teachings. With this in mind, Rachel committed to sharing what she had learned, whether through conversations, written reflections, or simply modeling a life lived with intentionality and purpose. Still, she knew that the work wasn't hers alone. It was part of a greater unfolding, a ripple effect of understanding that could touch countless lives. As she looked ahead, she prayed, not to a distant deity, but to the infinite substance of which she was a part. For the courage to continue stepping into the unknown, trusting that the same unity that guided her would guide others too. Her journey had revealed the secret Spinoza spoke of. True freedom begins not when we say yes to everything, but when we learn to say no to what doesn't align with our essence.